Hi, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman, and I work on a Django app on this stream. And we're going to continue on that application this evening. I hope you're here to join along, ask questions. Hey, I recognize that Google presentation theme too. Not a very clever pre-stream banner, but it's been effective for me. Thanks for noticing, K-Ray C. So we're going to keep working on some stuff that I've been doing for my site. And as a reminder, if you've never joined the stream before, I build a homeschool application for my family. It's built using Django, and I show off what I've learned and just the process of building an actual application, which you don't see everywhere. A lot of them are hidden behind proprietary systems for companies, and there aren't a ton of examples of doing this live. So that's what we're doing here. Before I do that, and before we get into some of these issues tonight, there are a variety of ways to keep up with me. I've got links above to my website and various handles to services like Twitter and GitHub if you want to connect with me. Also, there is a link down below on the Twitch stream page for my Discord. So if you want to chat about something about Django, you're welcome to do that there. And finally, I have a Patreon account. So if you've enjoyed what you're seeing and you want to contribute financially, that would be awesome. I'm at patreon.com/mblehman there. And I want to thank my patrons of Rupert, Abdulaziz, Patrick, Mark, and Eric for your contributions. I'm really grateful for the way you support what I do. All right, let's jump into what we're going to work on tonight. I'm going to continue to pick from the list of issues that I've got going on. I did get a couple of new things that my spouse reported on, things that she wants to see in the future. I haven't thought enough on them yet, so we're not going to go into those. And I say my spouse because my spouse is the customer of this application. So if you're wondering, like, what does his spouse have to do with anything? She's the one that's actually saying, hey, I need this. I need the site to do this. So that's where that's coming from. I thought today we'd start with a little bit of stuff about the data model to help enforce some data quality issues that are in the app that are present that I have not addressed, and then also work through maybe a couple of these empty states to do some theme work and HTML layout work just to get examples of how that works too. Brush up on Tailwind, finish off some things that are there. So I want to start with this issue, I think. And I'll open up just so people can see where we're coming from, the models that are in the application. And I bring this up just about every stream, but it's it's a big enough app that if you haven't been watching, then you wouldn't know what all this stuff is, and I can't just throw you into the deep end. So I'm building an app that's for schools, as I mentioned. It's for homeschools, and it has things that are related to schools that you might anticipate, at least if you're knowledgeable of the U.S. education system. So we have schools, school years, grade levels, students, courses, those kind of things. And the issue that we're going to work on first is this one about adding a constraint. When I am working with a school year in the application, or rather when a user is working with a school year, then there are certain expectations that I am going to enforce in the application. Namely, that there's only a single student per grade level per school year. So you can't be both in a single school year, be a third grader and a fourth grader. That won't work out in the system. I make certain assumptions when I'm looking up users, looking up information about them, and if it came back as multiple answers, it's just going to cause problems in the app, and it's not a reasonable expectation. Like, I don't want to. I suppose there's a very corner case where somebody happens to advance a grade level in the middle of a school year, but I think that most homeschools that might be using the system, which I am hoping to share with others in the future, are not going to fall into that bucket. So I'm not going to design for that case. I think it's a very reasonable constraint to make sure that a student can only be signed up for one grade level in a single school year. Yeah, that's a great question, KRC. It is a auto-generated graph, and it's pretty easy to do, which is actually really cool. So I'll show you. Let's take a look. So I have this as a makefile target. I use a makefile to do some quick commands. And here's the command right here. So it is coming from a package called Django extensions. And I think I probably have the documentation up in Reach. Oh, I even have it to graph models because I must have been asked this question in a previous stream or been reading the documentation myself. But Django extensions has a variety of tools in it that make working with Django a little bit easier. Some of these are more helpful than others, and this one is kind of an extra layer on top. So by adding, and you can read the docs, and I'll drop the link into the chat so you can visit it yourself. But you essentially you install a PyGraphids package, and it's a format tool that ultimately will generate an SVG or a dot file format that you can be dumped into another output. And now that I say that, it may not actually be an SVG, it's in a PNG, excuse me. So if you look at this command, what I've done is I've given it the Django apps in my project. I only have 5 of them right now. And so you run a management command, and it's called graph models, and you give it the apps you want to graph, and you say -o in the file name you want to give it. And by using PNG here, it looks for certain packages to be available, and if they are, it will go ahead and create the PNG. If they aren't available, I think it will tell you what it's missing. So you can try it out that way. Also, there is a way to include more than just a set of apps that you specify. I believe that there's a way to get all of your apps. So the downside of that is that if you have third-party packages and you don't care about the models that are there, those would be included too. So that's a little bit more information than you might want. So this is a little more manually controlled by specifying the apps, but I'm not adding a lot of apps in my project. And it gives me this reasonably sized diagram. So this is everything that I have built, all of these models up here. And then if you get down low enough, you start to see some stuff that's being pulled in by Django. That's the Django user models and abstract user and some permissions and groups and all that stuff. And some stuff from Django Waffle as well. So that's where that stuff comes from. But good question. Thank you for asking it. What else can we say? Okay, so let's get back to the problem at hand. I need to constrain the system so that a student can only be part of a single grade level for a single school year. So that enforcement of how a school year is even connected to a grade level is through this enrollment model. And you can see that it's got 2 foreign keys. One is the grade level, one is the student. So when enrollment happens, that's where I need to enforce this. And I think I only have enrollment in a single place right now. And I believe it's a single form. I'm going to have to change it in the future for other purposes, but I don't think we're going to get to that issue tonight. So let's take a look and see if we can find that form and then make a test to prove that it will allow anything right now and that we don't want it to. Okay, so let's go to, where's this going to be? It's a student's view, I think. Did I get that right? Yeah, here it is, the enrollment create view. So we're adding, this enrollment view is adding a bunch of data to the context to create this. I put this on a certain page that is going to pre-populate certain stuff. But most of the information will be there. And the big key here is that I'm using a specific enrollment form, and that form has no doubt some customization, custom validation. So let's look at the students forms area and see what's in there and see why I added the enrollment form, probably for some custom cleaning. Yeah, I just wanted to make the reason that I have this enrollment form, because you can create views just by using a model and some field attributes. But as the moment you need to do extra validation, then you have to go onto this form system. They don't give you really any other way in Django. So it's a reasonable thing to build your own form. So we've already got the basis here, which is nice. We don't have to do all that setup because I've done that in the past. So what we want to do is in the clean method, we are going to add some extra validation. And let's talk for a second about why it's going to go in clean. If you look at how forms are done in the Django documentation, you might encounter something like, we've got 2 fields here. So let's say you want to validate something specifically about the student field. In that case, you could define a clean student field like this. And I want to say it even gets the value passed into it. And then do something on it. And that's checking something about student. And you could also do something about the grade level. You could have a clean grade level method and do something on that as well. But the reason that clean exists is because there are cases where you need to check like multiple pieces of data together. And if you try to do that in the specific clean methods, then the ordering is not really necessarily guaranteed, so you don't have access to the values that you want to access, which means that when we're trying to solve what I'm trying to solve here, which is that we need to check that the grade level, that the student is not in any other grade levels, then I think it's going to go in clean. But as I say that, I am now less convinced of that. Let me think through this for a minute. Let's go back to that other views file as well. And I'm saying that because what constraint am I trying to enforce? I'm trying to enforce that a student is only added to a single grade level for a single school year. So do we even need the grade levels at the time? Because as long as I can get to the school year, then I could query the grade level table to check if there's an existing grade level. I don't care which one, it just needs to be there. So I need to figure out, is the school year added to the form? And maybe it's not. Maybe that's something that we need to add in order to actually do this determination. I think it might be. All right. I think we're going to have to adjust some stuff here. Because where this view is generated right now, let's bring up the student's URLs file as well. The way this is working is this view is getting the student from the UUID that is in this view. You can see it right here. And it's passing in the school year as well. So in the context data, we're doing a 404 if the school year isn't built. But that context data is not accessible to the form itself. So we're going to have to pass this extra bit of data in to the form keyword arguments method that's here if we want to be able to have the school year to check against. And in this case, actually, now that I know that that's going to be there, we can actually perhaps use the clean student method to do this validation. So that might be a better place to do this. Because when you do clean on the general form, it's not as good. I'll always put it that way. But let me think on that for a minute. So we know we need school year. What's the best way to get it? Okay, as I stare at this more, I think clean is going to be the easiest. Let's look at why. The clean method, in order to create an enrollment, I have to get a student, and I have to do validation on that student, and I raise a form validation error if I don't have it. Same is true of the grade level. I have to check that the grade level is part of the school because I don't want users to be able to add students to their own grade levels or from like other people. I have protections in there that making sure that people can't get to that data. But look at the nice side effect of this. So by the time we get to the end of this clean method here, right at line 27, we are guaranteed of two things. We're guaranteed that we have a student, and we're guaranteed that we have a grade level. Additionally, the school year is available through the grade level. So we can do a check that says, is there already, let me actually just kind of sketch this out, and then we'll add a test later. So if an enrollment, because remember, that's the thing that's connecting grade levels and students. If an enrollment exists, so we want to get the right enrollment set. So we'll do enrollment.objects.filter, and we're going to say we want to check our student because that's what we have. And we want to check, what else do we want to check? We want to check the grade level if there are any that match this condition. Grade level dot school year. If this exists, if any of those exist, then that's the condition where we want to fail. So if this is true, then we want to say something like what do we want to say? A student may not be enrolled in multiple grade levels. So I think that's the whole chunk of code that we want. Now, here's where we have to go above and beyond, because this is a single project. This is me, and I need to be able to manage this site indefinitely. So I know that I feel pretty confident about this code, and hopefully you saw what I did and you can agree with my assessment here that this is the right thing to do if you have an understanding of the models. But I need to prove this to myself now and forever. So I'm going to write an automated test based on this to do this checking. So that's the sometimes I do test-driven development, where I'm writing the test first about what I expect, and then sometimes I find that it's easier to like put in a sketch of the code, especially for something that feels kind of small like this, and then reason about it, and then write the test afterwards to prove that the chunk of sketch of code that I have is actually accurate. So in other words, I'm not a purist when it comes to test-driven development or doing it any other way. I think it kind of depends on how I'm feeling and the context and the type of issue that I'm trying to solve. But what I will say that we can do is, now that we have, I think, the solution in place, we can comment it out. I would like to see it fail, a failing case first. And that way we have a high degree of confidence that the change is doing the correct thing and not just passing just because. So where are we going to go from here? We need to create a test for this form method. And I don't actually know if I have a test file for this. It looks like I don't. I have a test for views. I guess I was doing most of this testing just through a view, which is actually a little bit overkill for what I was doing. So writing a test of just the form is really going to be more performant, because you're not going to be spinning up the Django client. It doesn't exercise all of the middleware, all of this extra stuff that would happen in doing a more of an end-to-end test style. That gets thrown out when you just are doing tests on the actual form. So we're going to start with a new file. I'm calling it testforms.py, and I have got a base test class to start with, which is derived from Django test plus test case class, which in turn is derived from the Django test case class. And so we're going to test the enrollment form, and it's going to subclass from test case. And we want to test that students only enroll in one grade level per year. That's a long method name. I usually don't like making them that long, but I can't think of a way to really shorten that up. But I am going to add a test doc string, because I don't like I kind of actually hate these long method names, because our eyes aren't good at processing that information well because of the underscores. They actually want to connect it all together. And so when you're reading natural language, the reason that we historically use spacing between characters is because our eyes are good at reading distinct pieces. So by writing a doc string, I feel anyway, that it produces a better result and a more understandable result. So we'll say a student can only be enrolled in a single grade level in a school year. I'm probably going to go over the line limit. So I need to, I just barely got it in there. Must be 86 characters, and Black starts complaining at 88. So nailed it. Okay, so what do we need? We need, we're going to need the form. And in order to build the form has a user. And I guess I need to clean up this method because we don't need that. That was just there for show. So we're going to need a user, which we can call make user from the test plus test case to get us a user record. And I know that we're going to need the form, and it's the enrollment form, and it takes a user as an argument there. It's a keyword argument specifically. And so we also, I guess, need the enrollment form. So that's in the students app. So we'll say from homeschool dot students dot forms import enrollment form. So that gives us the form. And the test for the moment is it's going to need some data to test it. So we're going to need to put in some data for the form because that's part of the contract of the form. In order to do an actual saving or any actual action on it, we have to do that. And we want to do, so let's worry about the data in a second. And ultimately what we care about is that when we do form is valid, which is the method you call to check that everything is cleaned properly, this is valid is going to be false. So we want to assert the negative of this. Assert that is valid is not true. Okay. It's complaining about types because I haven't put that on yet. And ultimately, we're also going to want to assert that this particular message is coming out. So let's bring that into the test, and we'll assert, we'll put that below and say we want to assert that this guy here is in the form non-field errors. Non-field errors are the fields that are not specific to a certain field. So if we, for instance, raised a validation error in clean student, that wouldn't go in here. That wouldn't come from non-field errors. That would be in the errors dictionary keyed to the student. But when you have errors that happen inside of the generic clean, they get grouped into non-field errors. And if you look in the errors dictionary, so after you do the validation, the form will be, if it wasn't valid, the form will be populated with a dictionary that is called errors. And the non-field errors are in with a key that is called all by default. But I find that that's not very compelling. It's kind of confusing of what that means. So there's this method of non-field errors on it that I think is probably just doing an access to this errors all attribute, but it just is, it's semantically more meaningful to see it this way. But this is what we want to see, and I think this is most of the test. So we need to do one other thing. Well, we need to do a couple other things. So the data for the enrollment form, the enrollment needs two pieces of data. It needs a student. So we're going to get student on the student ID, which doesn't exist yet. And we want to also have a grade level ID. Okay. So those both need to exist before we can actually run this test. You can see my editor is angry and red and complaining. So let's create ourselves a student. We want to say, and actually the easiest way to create a pre-existing enrollment and check that there's something there is to use the enrollment factory. So we're going to create an enrollment and use the enrollment factory. And because it's using subfactories from Factory Boy, we don't have to pass in anything else. It will just automatically create a student. Oh, I lied. We're going to have to tweak it. So in order to get to get past this check and this check, we need to make sure that we pass in the user to the enrollment factory. But first, let's bring in the enrollment factory, and that's in the students app as well, because that's where the enrollment model is defined. So we're going to go from tests, factories, import enrollment factory. And so now we've got an enrollment factory, but now we need to make sure that both the student and the grade level are appropriate. And so the student has a school attribute that is going to be the user's school. So that just says that the student is from the user's school. And the other thing that we're going to need is the grade level. The grade level school year, and then school is also going to be the user's school. Okay, so now we've got those two things, and we're going to use the same student. So we'll do enrollment student like that. And now here's where we need we need a new grade level. We need another grade level. In fact, I want to call that out specifically, so we'll actually say another grade level, just to give it a clear name that it's different from the grade level for the student. And then we'll say another grade level is equal to the grade level factory. So we're going to create a grade level, and it needs to be tied to the school year. So we're going to use the school year from the enrollment. So one way to get that is through the enrollment grade level school year. And then we're going to need the grade level. So we're going to go from homeschool, schools, tests, factories, import grade level factory. Okay. So right now, this test will fail because there's nothing checking this stuff, and it should go right through and create another enrollment, and that would be, or it's going to validate. Yeah, so it's actually saying that it's true, that there are no problems with this, and that's exactly the condition that I don't want to be the case. I want it to complain and say, like, you can't do that. So we've got our test in place, and we're going to come down to this extra chunk of code that we had commented out, and we'll see if I got it right. And so we're checking against the student, we're checking against the grade level, and if there is an existing one, which there is in this test, it's right here, then it's going to raise a form validation error, so this should now pass. Super. So we've got our code change, we've got a new test and a new test case, and we can add those, and I'll check it just to make sure that the coverage is good before I push it up, and I think that issue will be done. So as I was saying earlier, I write tests for everything because I'm the one that has to manage this. Oh, geez. And this is why you run tests. Test no double enrollment. Maybe I already had a test for this. Oh, cool. Okay. So maybe that's great. That's really interesting. So there's an interesting side effect that comes out of this. And I'm not sure that I actually like it because the message is kind of confusing. Let's go to the other file And this was called the double enrollment test. So what I think I was trying to do is making sure that a user was not in there twice. And what is this message? So what did I do? I was saying enroll in the same grade level. That's what I did here. So I created an enrollment, and then I tried to enroll in it again, like a double enrollment, and I got an error message. And I think the error message is from I think that's coming from the fact that when Django is trying to create the new enrollment, it has a foreign key for student and a foreign key for grade level, and you can't have two of them to be exactly the same thing. Or is that true? How did I enforce that? Maybe I have it on the model. Yeah, I have a unique constraint here that makes sure that that the thing can never exist twice. But it's actually more complicated than that because of this extra thing that I was talking to you about. Is like, it's not just that it's not the same for that year, it's also that you can't be enrolled in two grade levels in the same school year. So it's not at the grade level that it matters, it's at the school year level that it matters. So I think what that's telling me is that while this unique constraint is nice, and I will leave it there, it's going to catch something. The fact that I have this new checking on the enrollment form is even better. So I'm trying to think if I still like the message, though. That's the only thing that I'm worried about, because the way I wrote this message is it implies that the grade levels will be different, but this existence check says that it what does it say? It doesn't matter what grade level it is, it's just calling out any of them. So I think I need to actually correct this. I want to improve this message to include the grade level that the user is already enrolled in, so that even if it is a different one, if it's a different one, it's very clear, like your kid's already enrolled in second grade, you're not going to enroll them in third grade too. If it's the same one, then it's already clear. Your kid's already enrolled in second grade, we're not going to re-enroll them in second grade. That's duplicate. So that's extra stuff. So let's rework this chunk of code based off of what we see in this test. And I think ultimately this test double method will still go away. Yeah, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and delete it because this other test will cover it, but we're going to improve that error message stuff in the other test. So come back over here. And we will say what? What will we say? We'll say a student may not be enrolled in multiple grade levels. It's actually not even that good because it doesn't specify the school year. So we want to say in a single school year. And Black broke that up in an ugly way. Let's drop single and put this back together. Okay. And then we can say student. So we'll make an F string here and say student is enrolled in grade level. From the test point of view, it's going to be enrollment grade level. So I'm using an F string, and that's going to call the stir attribute on each of those two things. And oops, it's not just student. So that's what we're checking right now. So we're gonna have to fix up the code because now this is not correct. So let's put a space there so that there's actually reads well. And we can see what I expected to see. So A student may not be enrolled in multiple grade levels in a school year. And then here's got the student's full name, Stephen Bond in this case, because it's generated by fake data, is enrolled in 0 grade is the name of the grade level because that's what the factory is generating. So the error message down here is not specific enough. So really what we want to do is not an exist check. Instead, we need to change this around. We need to change it to enrollment is equal to this. And instead of exist, we want to change it to first. And so what first will do, it will give us an object, or it will give us none if it didn't find one. And actually, now that I say that, because we're going to also use this as our error message, we want to do a specific select related on this, so we make sure that we don't do extra queries. So we want to select the related student and the related grade level. Okay, so that's just a database optimization thrown in there. And we'll delete the colon, and so we want to say if enrollment. So if one of these exists, then that means that there is something there that shouldn't be there. So this should still, the is valid part should still be false, but we're going to get the wrong message. It's because we haven't changed the message yet. So it's still validating the way we expect it to, but now we just need to update the message. And we're going to say multiple grade levels in a school year, just like above, and did that same silly wrapping. Well, what can you do? And we're going to drop in enrollment here. And I think I'm going to leave it. I don't really like how it's doing this wrapping, but that's not something that I can really deal with. So I guess I could get away with maybe doing it on one line by doing this, but I don't know. Okay, I guess 2 lines is better than 1 line here. So it's not the most pretty formatted chunk of code, but it should do the right job. Great. So now we've got an extra case that I hadn't considered previously, where it's checking for the double enrollment scenario. And in the future, if I ever change this code for whatever reason and ripped out this validation, I still have that unique constraint to fall back to if there was ever a problem. Because while I said it's important that a user is not enrolled in 2 grade levels in a single school year, it's really important that there aren't 2 records for the same grade level for the same school year. So I'm not going to delete the unique constraint. All right, so we changed some stuff. We reworked the code. It didn't survive the test, so that's fine. And now I'm wondering, should I do, all right, let's try, will it look better if I get rid of this local variable? Nope, I need it because I need it for the error message. Okay, so never mind. So this is our new version of this, where we get an enrollment. If we have one, it's bad. We change our error message. And we've changed our test, and we deleted that extra test because it's not going to hit this case. It's not going to hit this error message that would come from the unique constraint, because it's going to fail at this other validation error before it even gets to that, I think. Let's run make coverage again and see what happens. Cool. We've got it working. And I don't know how bad the frame rate is on everything, so it may not be perceptible for you as on the stream. But basically, when we get to these form tests, it's essentially instantaneous from my eye. And That is not true of when we get to these view tests. I can actually see the ... It's subtle, but that kind of stuff will add up over time. I only have 300 tests in this suite for now, but when I get to 1,000 tests or something, so that makes a big difference of where you're spending time and how you're optimizing. So if you can isolate to your component and test just the thing you want to test, you can often get a better test suite. And let's check MyPy. All right, that's no big deal. So the message is a student can only be enrolled in one grade level per school year. And that fixes the issue. What issue number? Issue number 128. Great. I'll push that up. So you can see it because I used fixes, it automatically knew to close the issue because that's fixes is something that the name even says this commit closes issue 128. So you can use that keyword to actually use close GitHub issues. Now, looking back at the report, we're down to 14. So let's carry on. Let's do one of these empty state ones because there's a little bit of kind of UI work and it's kind of a breath of fresh air from staring at data so much. Not that staring at data is bad, it's part and parcel for what you do for building apps, but you don't always want to be doing it. So question is, which one do we do? Probably this one. So let's actually look at the site. So in all of this work, we haven't actually even looked at the site today because we haven't needed to. We were dealing with data stuff. But we'll bring it up so that we can see what I'm talking about, because this is going to be important. We'll be spending more time doing visual stuff. I had to add, per the request of my customer, a reports section. And this report section right now only has a single report. And so, if we go in here and ultimately what this will be is it will have progress reports, which is what you see here, with like some like fake data and some real data, but that will cover every course that a student is participating in and every task that they've done, and if they have any grades, what those grades will be. And eventually there will be a report card and there'll be some other reports in here. But when there are no school years, and I don't want to delete the school year to see that, we'll actually probably can go into the data and monkey with the template to get it what it looks like. But the short version is there's nothing. There's no reports to see yet. And that's on the reports index page. So you can see that if there are any enrollments, that's what I'm checking for in order to deduce whether to show anything, show that table that you saw. Then we want to show the progress report, show the thing that showed up on this index page, this little table right here. But what if you don't have any enrollments yet? What if nobody's been enrolled, there's been no activity, and somebody's poking around on the site for the first time? Well, it'd be nice to have some kind of page there to indicate that that something is going to be there. So let's have a view for that scenario. So we're going to say elif, and for the moment we'll just say it's empty. And because we already have enrollments data, I'm going to fudge this for now and just pretend that there aren't enrollments. And what you'll see is just this reports word when it all refreshes. Or it won't because I'll have gotten it wrong. What did I do wrong? Whoops. Not elif. We need else. Okay. So we'll see this it's empty thing, this message that we added. And it's here that I want to include something visually interesting. And it might be a page that nobody would see. I don't know. It might be something that people are so driven to get to the end that it's very rarely seen. That's possible. But it still is something that we can add a little bit of flavor to make it seem like the site is just not so empty when a brand new user is coming to the site. Because there are users out there who like to click through everything just because. They might be what you can sometimes hear is called tire kickers, where they'll sign up for a service and they'll poke around and see what things are out there, and maybe they'll use the site, maybe they won't. And even for those people, if I have any chance of wanting to encourage them to use the site, I need to have not just a bunch of blank pages when they're not seeing what's there or not. So we need to put something here. And the question is like, what are we going to put here? Maybe I'll use what can I use? We've got. Here we go. Probably use something like this, which, so I've got this little image here of somebody checking off their stuff for creating a list and explaining what that thing is. But it's really what I'm looking for. It's less about, pay no attention to this image necessarily, but this concept of here's an image, here's something visually for your eye, and here's a description of what is happening. And there's a call to action in this one. I don't know that it makes sense to have a call to action on the reports, because that's kind of a downstream side effect of you enrolled, you did stuff, and now you've got something to see. So it's probably it's going to be more of a description to say, hey, this is where reports will be when you after you do some things, but you haven't done anything yet. So we're going to take this kind of markup. I think it's got enough here. I like the sizing of it, seems appropriate, and we'll use it as our starting point. And so let's go to the course detail template and find that chunk, which is this one, I think, right here. And we'll won't do whatever I just did. We're going to yank around that tag, and we're going to put it here. Okay. And this would break if we try to see it right now. So let's come in here and we'll delete like I said, I don't think we're going to have a call to action button. That's usually what those buttons are called. They're called call to action. Or sometimes people will say CTA if you're in the SaaS industry. But I don't think we'll need one. And all I really want to do right now is see that it will show something. So let's return to our reports page. And I didn't include static, so we need to include static. Include? That's not right, is it? Load. Word does not include. Include is a different thing. So we're loading some template tags, the static template tags, and then we need that because this image is a static file that is going to be stored in a certain place, and we don't hard code paths. We use the static tag to get the right location. You might wonder why, but there are good reasons for this. For instance, when my site is ultimately online and available to people, the stuff that puts all the static files together will actually add hashes or some kind of MD5 checksum or something like that to the file name to fingerprint it, so that if it can be cached for long periods of time. And so that would be impossible to set in the source attribute here. But by using this static template tag, it uses a reference and can do like a lookup. So it can have a dictionary of, the key that we actually need in the static files is to-do.svg, but we're going to have a manifest built up of all of the final variable names. So it can say, okay, to-do.svg, what is your final variable name? It's to-do dash some large number.svg. Okay, we'll put that there in the HTML output instead. Bring this page up. We can get rid of it's empty. We don't need that anymore. And so this is a fairly pleasant looking starting point. But we're going to change the image. We're going to change the copy. We're like, none of this is going to stay the same. I just wanted the structure. All right, let's go to the site where I get these images from. And that site is called Undraw. This individual, Katerina, and I can never say her last name, so I apologize, Limpensuni, is she's done this amazing thing for the community, the world, and I don't know, anybody who discovers this, of made these SVGs available for anyone who wants to use them for free. It's pretty remarkable, actually, that she's done all this work. And it's got a search that's powered by Algolia, as you can see. So you can look for different types of images. And then furthermore, and I'm going to, actually I need to turn off I use Flux. So I've been staring at like an orangey version of this to keep it easy on my eyes, but I actually need to see the colors for this work. You can change the color here. So you can pick whatever color you want this to be, and it changes the look and feel of the SVG. So that when you download it, you can download something that's tailor-made to whatever it is you're trying to build. So we need to have some kind of icon that will feel appropriate for the scenario that we're in. And I searched for report because that seemed like the most logical thing to search for. And so I want to have something here. And I'm trying to think about what kind of message I want for this page. If someone encounters this for the first time, what do they want? And I think I saw an image that I might like already. I think I want the takeaway to be like, measuring progress, measuring how well things are going. That's the feeling that I would love to invoke with whatever imagery is here. So a lot of these are, they're not bad, but they just don't evoke that kind of emotion. But I did see one that I think does get to this. And additionally, I'm going to keep looking through here for a minute. Maybe there's another one that rings more true. No. All right. I think I like this one right here. And it even says, like it's even got a good name. It's indicating that it's talking about progress. And there's a couple of things I like about it. So this is my personal experience. I don't know that this is universally true, but in my circles, in my communities, the people that are doing the homeschooling are generally the mothers, the wives that are in my community. So I am making a gross generalization, I recognize that, but I try and look for imagery that has women in it, frankly, because I want it to resonate more with, I think, who is going to be the default audience. And right now I know that's for example, I know that's my spouse, and she is a woman. So that's the kind of stuff that I look for. So this thing has got that going for it. It's got a woman standing there, and it's got this clear idea of something growing and getting better. I guess from your point of view over here, getting better, which I think is a feeling that is also good anyway, to see like if this is reports about students, and remember this is homeschool, so these students are like your children most likely. So you want this feeling of my kids are getting better too. Like they're making progress in school, or they themselves are growing and becoming better individually. Either of those is a good thing that I want people to feel. So this seems like a good choice. So what we need to do is two things. I need to get the right color. So I'm going to inspect the color that I use, and we're going to find the color picker and see that there's our color, 2B6CB0. 2B6CB0. Okay, so there's the version that is of the blue that I'm using for this site. And then I'm going to get this image, which now has our blue embedded in it. And we'll say download. Undraw progress data. So we're downloading that, and I will, what am I going to do? I'm going to come over here and move that, and I'll say static. So I'm putting all of these just in static for now. I'm not grouping them in any different way. So we're going to move from my downloads directory, undraw progress, and we'll just call it progress SVG. That's totally going to get, that's going to get confused over time, because if I ever have like a progress bar or something like that, that's going to mess me up. So we'll say progress graph SVG, which is a little bit more descriptive. And I believe that I have the default program that I have to open on my Mac is Image Optim for SVGs. And so what I just did was I opened this SVG file in Image Optim, which is an image optimization tool, and it just pulled out any of the little bits that might be extra in the SVG, and in its processing it found a 10% size savings. So I'm just sort of optimizing it just enough to really squeak out any performance benefit I can out of that image. Okay, so we've done that. We've got the progress graph, and so now we're going to come over to the template, and we're going to replace to do with progress graph, and we'll give it a different alt. Making progress. Sure, that'll work. Come back over to our page, and we're done with the color picker. We'll refresh. Whoops, I killed the server. Let's bring that back. Refresh. And cool. Now we've got a nice tidy little picture of a report. And so now we need to change some copy here. So we've got it's already styled appropriately, but we need to change what it says. So let's see, what do we want to say? Let's change this tag to be view your reports. Yeah, that fits. When are they going to see this? That's probably the thing that because there's not going to be any, again, there's not going to be any call to action, so there's not going to be any indicator of this is what you need to do to see something here. So I just want to inform them of when will things appear here. So the answer is when there are enrollments. So we'll say after you have enrolled your students, you can view reports. Reports about what? You can view reports about their progress. I guess let's call it out by name, the very thing that I want to highlight. And then that last paragraph is, let's just comment it out for a second. I don't know if we'll want a second paragraph. All of those reports will appear here when there is more data. When, not more data, when there is any data, when there is data to display. And I attempted, so I have an entire onboarding page, and I showed it to my spouse, who is a very talented editor, and she tore me apart. And it was good. It was a good outcome because of the prose that came out of it was way more clear. So I'm putting something here that is kind of notional, and at some point I will run it by her and show her, and she can say like, Matt, that was really silly, and help me fix it, because I am not a copywriter. I do my best and have something, but it is not my specialty by a long shot. Okay, so, but I think what we have here is good enough. It's checking the boxes for me. It's saying like, you're not seeing anything here because you haven't enrolled students. And when you have enrolled students, their reports will appear here and you can see their progress. And then I kind of hint at there's going to be more. You need some data before you can actually do that. But this page feels pretty clean to me. It's got a nice, very casual image of a woman, and she's even holding a book, which is, I think it's a book. It looks very book-like to me, although that's actually her. I thought there was pages initially, but that's really her shoulder. So I'm not really positive what she is holding. Some kind of report? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. She's holding something that looks book-like or teacher-like. And then we've got this nice little graph going up and to the right, along with a flower. Is she doing this outside? I don't know, but I think it just kind of adds it to the feeling of making it pleasant. All right. So that. Whoops. Let's actually, very importantly, let's go remove that part there. That would be bad if I left that in, because then you'd always see the empty view even when you had enrollments, or it would be the opposite of what you'd want, because when you had an empty thing, it would try and show this table and wouldn't actually show anything useful, and then you'd never see the empty state. But not a crazy hard change. We added a new file, we found a good image. We made sure that the image gels well, because the undraw tool gives us the ability to pick the color. We added a little bit of copy and explained the purpose of it, and have a simple but pleasant looking output, I think. Could it be more visually eye-catching? Sure. Does it need to be? I don't know. I don't think so. So let's add that, and we've got the progress and we've got the template, and let's commit it and say add empty state for what? For report, for the reports index page. And that fixes what number? Fixes, there it is, 129. And I think this page is ultimately going to have to actually get more advanced, because there are other kinds of reports as well that my spouse has highlighted. It's not just whether someone is enrolled or not. For example, like we're going to have to make this resource report, which will be any materials that are associated with a course, she wants to be able to get them because she has to prove to our county here in Maryland that we're educating our kids with actual materials and not just saying, yeah, go read some books. So she has to provide evidence of what she's doing. And so we need to build a resource report. So that'll ultimately be here as well. And that has nothing to do with students. So this page will be reworked in the future. But the general idea of having something here that is a nice basic image. In fact, I might take this template and apply this to any report page that doesn't have information. Like, for example, if somehow, well, I shut down the server. Let's finish this up. I can show you what I mean. If for whatever reason somebody's able to get to this progress report, which although I guess they probably can't because this is specific to a student, I think it's just going to 404 on them. So it may not be relevant here. So I take back what I said. I was trying to think of if there's a page, if there's a report that someone could get to that wasn't going to have any information yet. I might use that same image just kind of universally to say, like, here's the graphic that represents no reports. Kind of a common theme that people can gravitate to. Okay, but that is not a tonight thing. So we'll push that up and look at what do we have left. I think the other stuff that I was probably going to work on is going to be more of the same. I'm burning down through the tasks. So she gave me a lot of feedback. I signed her up with the service. I deployed things to Heroku, and she started using it for her school year that's coming up. We run our kids on a calendar year, so she's planning already for their start in January. And I got a ton of feedback from that of here are the things that I need in order to build out the school year, me being her in that scenario. And I'm finally getting to the bottom of that list. Like before I got that round of feedback, we were working on this, adding this concept of a break day. But I don't really want to get back into that today. I think what I will continue to do, perhaps offline of the stream, is work through these other 3 issues, and these 2 new ones I'll continue to set aside, and we'll get back to the break day because this is a critical element of being able to set the schedule. Right now, the app does not account for breaks, and so the schedule is kind of useless. As soon as you hit a break, things fall apart. It's not going to line up anymore. So it's not doing its job yet. Thankfully, I've got many months before it has to do its job, but I want to have that in place and working long before she gets there, so to make sure that the school year will work. So that's the plan. So what do we do today? We did a couple of things. We did some data validation, and you saw a form. We talked about the clean method. We talked about using specific clean methods for fields, but we didn't end up using them. We just used the clean method because it had the 2 model attributes that we needed, and we wrote a test for that. And I talked about how using a specific test for just the form was faster than doing an entire view test and going through all of that stack. So that was for that change. And then along the way, we encountered a failure that I didn't anticipate, which showed that we reworked the system to improve the error message, make it clear what we're actually trying to enforce, so that it's not just whether a student is signing up for 2 different grade levels from the same year, but also when they've already signed up for that grade level for that particular year. So the error message improvements were beneficial there. That was that issue. And then we were ready to move on to something more visual. And we did that. We bidded an empty page. You saw it. I'll bring it up again just to have something nice and pleasant to sign off the stream with of, what does it look like when you don't have data? And I want to say, like, this is a really common thing if you're building a SaaS app that a lot of people don't think about. A lot of businesses don't think about this. Especially if you're a well-entrenched and established business, you might be operating in a development environment that has a ton of seed data. And so you're always used to seeing data be present. And it's very, very easy to forget about the fact that there are new users, they start out with nothing, and they might see nothing. And is your app going to account for that state? Are you caring about the details where they get messages to say like, hey, here's what this page is for, like, and here's what we're going to show you, and here's what you will ultimately see, even though we don't have data to show you today. That was something I learned at my last job, was something we always had to care about, was what are these empty states? Can we provide this experience? And I think it's something that I would recommend you think about when you're designing apps and you're considering your users. You want to give them a good experience. You want them to stick around. And if you do a bad job here, if they come to your front door and they check it out and it seems like a ghost town because you haven't populated a thing to tell them how the app is going to work, then they're going to leave, is most likely what happens in a lot of those scenarios. So think about your empty states. Make something. Use a site like Undraw. I'm not saying you have to use Undraw, of course. There's tons of sites out there that are like this. If maybe you want to use real imagery, in which case you could check out a site like Unsplash, which is free photographs and images that again, powered by a search engine. You search for things you want. You can use these. I think this is more often used in something like a blog post. That's what I use these kind of images for. But you can. And so give people something visually interesting and think about them when they don't have data yet. And that way you are the one directing the story. You're the one guiding them for how they're going to use your SaaS product. And I think they'll get a lot more value out of it. That's where I'll leave it this evening. Hopefully you learned something along the way. I do take this stuff and I post it up on YouTube. If you enjoyed what you saw, give me a like, follow, subscribe, wherever you're seeing this from, and whatever's appropriate. And if you want to see more in the future, I do try to stream every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern time. That's pretty consistent unless I'm on vacation or doing something else. And we continue to work on this Django application, and I build it out. And if you want to go back and view past streams, they're all up on YouTube, but I also take and build out show notes for each of them. And there is, where did this one start? I started this one from scratch. Here it is. So if you want to see the genesis of this project, and I can't say this is the most amazing app in the world ever. It's functional and it looks decent, but it's slowly building out stuff, and the way that happens is just over time. So if you want to see this project start from the very beginning and me outline all of the bits that I plan on doing, and then go through all of the steps along the way to get from there to here, you can do that. And you can check out show notes and view things there. So that's another resource that's available for you if you're interested. Thank you for joining in this evening. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm MB Lehman there. If you want to contribute on Patreon, I'm MB Lehman as well. I would totally be open to that. Thank you so much. Hope you have a great night and take care.